The phone felt like ice against my ear, even though my hand was trembling so violently I could barely hold it steady. The nurse's voice on the other end was professional, carefully neutral in that way medical professionals master when delivering news that will shatter someone's world. "Mrs. Harrison, this is Memorial General Hospital. Your husband, David Harrison, was brought in approximately 40 minutes ago following a severe car accident on Route 27. He's in stable condition, but he's sustained injuries that require immediate attention. We need you to come in as soon as possible." I couldn't breathe. The walls of my home office seemed to close in, the afternoon sunlight streaming through the window suddenly too bright, too cheerful for what I was hearing. "David, my husband, an accident. Is he going to be okay?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. "The doctor will explain everything when you arrive, ma'am. But there's something else you should know." The nurse paused, and in that brief silence, I felt the first tremor of something beyond fear. "Your husband wasn't alone in the vehicle. There was a woman with him. She's also being treated for her injuries." A woman. The words hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. I was 6 months pregnant with our second child, my belly round and heavy beneath the oversized sweater I'd been living in. Our daughter, Mia, was at kindergarten. David had told me this morning he had back-to-back meetings all day. Important clients, couldn't be disturbed. "Who?" I started, but couldn't finish the question. Did I even want to know? "We'll need you to come in, Mrs. Harrison. Room 347 inches, the emergency wing." I don't remember the drive to the hospital. One moment I was standing in my office, staring at the family photo on my desk. David, Mia, and me at the beach last summer, all of us laughing, and the next I was parking in the hospital lot, my hands still shaking as I turned off the ignition. The emergency wing smelled like disinfectant and fear. Every hospital has that smell, the one that tells you nothing will ever be the same after you walk through those doors. A young doctor intercepted me before I reached David's room, his face drawn with exhaustion or perhaps the weight of what he was about to tell me. "Mrs. Harrison? I'm Dr. Reeves. Your husband is conscious and asking for you. Before you go in, I need to prepare you for what you're going to see. He has a concussion, several fractured ribs, and extensive bruising. He's going to recover, but he's in considerable pain right now." I nodded numbly, already moving past him toward room 347, but his hand on my arm stopped me. "Mrs. Harrison." His voice dropped lower. "The woman who was with him. She's in the room next door, room 349. She's also stable, but..." He hesitated, his eyes flicking to my pregnant belly and then away. "She's pregnant, too, about 7 months along." The floor tilted beneath my feet. 7 months pregnant. 7 months. I did the math automatically, unwillingly. 7 months ago was March. March was when I'd been in the depths of postpartum depression after Mia's birth complications, when I'd barely been able to get out of bed, when David had insisted I needed help and found me a personal trainer to get me moving again, to help me feel human. March was when Alexa had walked into our lives. "Where is she?" The words scraped out of my throat like broken glass. Dr. Reeves looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I really think you should see your husband first." "Where is she?" He pointed to room 349, just 2 doors down from David's room. I was already walking before I consciously decided to move, my body operating on some autopilot of rage and disbelief. Through the small window in the door, I could see her. Alexa, my personal trainer, the woman who'd come to my house 3 times a week for the past 8 months. The woman who'd held my hand while I cried about feeling disconnected from my body, who'd celebrated with me when I finally started feeling strong again, who'd come to Mia's 4th birthday party and brought her a yoga mat for when she gets bigger. The woman who'd been sleeping with my husband. She was lying in the hospital bed, her face pale beneath her tan, an oxygen mask partially obscuring her features. But what I couldn't look away from was her belly, round and unmistakable beneath the thin hospital blanket. A nurse was adjusting her IV, and Alexa's hand rested protectively over her stomach, the same gesture I caught myself making 100 times a day. The recognition must have shown on my face, because when her eyes met mine through the window, they widened with something between panic and shame. She knew I knew. The nurse noticed me staring and came to the door. "Can I help you, ma'am? Are you family?" "No," I said, my voice hollow. "I'm nobody. Nobody at all." I turned away and walked to room 347. My husband's room, the father of my children, of our children. The man I'd trusted with everything. David was awake, his head bandaged, his face a mess of cuts and bruises. When he saw me, relief flooded his features, quickly followed by something else. Guilt, fear. "Claire," he whispered. "Baby, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I stood at the foot of his bed, my hands resting on my pregnant belly, and said nothing, just looked at him. Really looked at him, perhaps for the first time in months. When had he become a stranger? When had I stopped seeing the lies written all over his face? "How long?" I finally asked. He closed his eyes. "Claire, please." "How?" "Long. 8 months." His voice was barely audible. "It started 8 months ago. I didn't mean for it to happen. You were going through so much after Mia, and I was weak, and she was just there. I'm sorry. God, Claire, I'm so sorry." 8 months, not 7, 8. Which meant Alexa had gotten pregnant almost immediately. Which meant all those times she came to my house, all those early morning sessions in my living room while David was supposedly getting ready for work, all those moments when I'd been grateful for her patience and kindness and support. "She's pregnant," I said. "I know." He was crying now, tears cutting tracks through the dirt still smudged on his face. "Claire, I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know what to do. I was going to end it. I swear I was going to end it. You were with her today. It wasn't a question. While I was home with your daughter growing inside me, you were with her. We were going to talk. I was going to tell her it was over, that I couldn't do this anymore. That's why we were in the car together." And then the truck came out of nowhere, and he broke down completely, his shoulders shaking with sobs that made him wince in pain. I should have felt something. Anger, betrayal, grief, but I felt nothing at all. Just an enormous emptiness where my heart used to be. I was a hollow shell, a pregnant statue standing in a hospital room, watching a stranger cry in a stranger's bed. "I'm going to check on her," I said calmly. Too calmly. "The mother of your other child. Claire, don't. Please don't." But I was already walking out, already moving toward room 349, toward the woman who'd destroyed my life while pretending to help rebuild it. Alexa saw me coming this time. She struggled to sit up, wincing, her hand still pressed protectively over her belly. The nurse had left, and we were alone in the room, 2 pregnant women connected by the same man's betrayal. "I'm sorry," she said immediately, her voice rough. "Claire, I'm so sorry. I never meant. How much did he pay you?" She blinked, confused. "What?" "For the training sessions. How much did my husband pay you to come to my house 3 times a week and sleep with him?" It wasn't like that. Tears were streaming down her face now. "I didn't plan this. I didn't plan any of this. It just happened." "It just happened!" I repeated the words, testing them in my mouth. "You just happened to sleep with your client's husband. You just happened to get pregnant at the same time as her. You just happened to keep coming to her house, watching her struggle, taking her money, all while carrying her husband's child. I wanted to tell you. So many times, I wanted to tell you. But David said what? That it would break me? That I couldn't handle it? That I was too fragile, too weak, too much of a mess to deserve the truth?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I looked at her belly, then at mine. 2 women, 2 pregnancies, 1 man's lies connecting us like a poisoned thread. In another life, in another universe, we might have been friends. We might have laughed about pregnancy cravings and swollen ankles, might have compared ultrasound pictures and debated baby names. In this life, we were casualties of the same crime. "Is it a boy or a girl?" I asked quietly. Alexa's hand trembled against her stomach. "A boy. It's a boy." I nodded slowly. "Mine too. I found out last week. I was going to surprise David tonight with a cake and everything. Blue frosting. It's a boy written on top." I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised us both. "I guess the surprise is on me." "Claire, don't." I held up my hand. "Don't say my name like we're friends. Don't apologize like it means anything. Just tell me one thing. Were you in love with him? Or was it just easy? Convenient? Fun?" She looked away, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. I don't know. At first, it was just chemistry. He was unhappy. You were distant. He said your marriage was already over, but then I got pregnant and everything changed. He said he would leave you. He promised he would choose me. Choose our baby. But he kept putting it off, kept making excuses. And then you got pregnant again, and I realized. She stopped, her voice breaking. I realized I was the other woman. I was always going to be the other woman. The words should have hurt. They should have torn me apart. But I was beyond pain now, existing in some cold, clear space where everything was brutally, painfully visible. He's not going to leave me, I said. Not because he loves me. Not anymore. But because I'm easy. I'm his wife. I'm the acceptable choice, the one that doesn't require explanations to his family or his colleagues. I'm the path of least resistance. So what are you going to do? Alexa asked, her voice small. I looked at her, really looked at her, this young woman who'd made the same mistake I had, who'd believed the same lies, who was now carrying the evidence of her poor judgment in her belly just like I was. She wasn't a villain. She was just another woman who'd trusted the wrong man. I'm going to go home, I said finally. I'm going to pick up my daughter from kindergarten. I'm going to make her dinner and give her a bath and read her 3 bedtime stories like always. And then I'm going to pack a bag for me and Mia and the baby I'm carrying, and I'm going to leave. You're leaving him? I'm leaving everything. The words felt right as I said them, felt true in a way nothing had felt true for months. I'm leaving the house we picked out together, the life we built together, the lie we've been living together. I'm leaving all of it behind. But where will you go? I smiled, and it felt like the first genuine smile I'd managed in 8 months. Anywhere but here. Somewhere he isn't. Somewhere I can breathe again. I turned to leave, but Alexa's voice stopped me. Claire? Your baby. Your son. What? What will you tell him? About his father? I looked back at her, at this woman who would always be connected to my family through the child she was carrying, through the man who'd betrayed us both. I'll tell him the truth, that his father is a man who makes promises he doesn't keep. That love requires more than words. It requires honesty and courage and showing up every single day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I paused. And I'll tell him about his brother, because those boys didn't ask for any of this, and they shouldn't have to pay for their father's mistakes. Alexa's eyes widened. You'd let them know each other? They're brothers, half-brothers. That's not their fault. That's ours. Mine for being blind, his for being weak, yours for being willing. I rested my hand on my belly, feeling the flutter of movement beneath my palm. My son's tiny kicks reassuring me he was still there, still fighting. But these babies? They're innocent, and I won't punish them for our sins. I left her crying in that hospital room and walked back to David's. He looked up hopefully when I entered, as if maybe, somehow, I was there to forgive him, to fix this, to make everything okay again. I'm leaving you, I said simply. I'm taking Mia. I'm taking our son when he's born, and I'm leaving. Claire, no, please. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. I'll do anything. You'll do anything except the one thing that matters. Go back in time and choose differently. Choose honestly. Choose me. I shook my head. I don't want your anything. I don't want your apologies or your promises or your explanations. I want nothing from you except my freedom. You can't just take my daughter. Watch me. The words came out cold, final. You broke our family, you destroyed our home, and now you're going to live with that. You're going to have to explain to Mia why Daddy doesn't live with us anymore. You're going to have to tell our son why he has a brother he can't see every day. You're going to carry that weight, David. Not me. Not anymore. I love you. He was begging now, his voice cracking. Claire, I love you. I made a mistake, but I love you. I looked at him, this man I'd married 7 years ago in a church full of white roses and happy tears, this man who'd held my hand through Mia's difficult birth, who'd sung to my belly every night when I was pregnant with her, who'd promised to love me in sickness and in health, for better or for worse. I know you do, I said quietly. That's the saddest part of all of this. You probably do love me, in whatever limited way you're capable of loving, but it's not enough, David. Love without respect, without honesty, without fidelity, that's not love at all. That's just sentiment. And I deserve more than your sentiment. I walked out of that room, out of the hospital, into the late afternoon sunshine that felt different now, sharper and clearer and somehow more real than it had been that morning. My phone buzzed. A text from the kindergarten asking when I was picking up Mia, my daughter, my light. The reason I would keep breathing, keep moving forward, keep believing that life could be good and honest and true. I drove to the school and watched her run out to meet me, her backpack bouncing, her smile bright as the sun. She climbed into her car seat, chattering about her day, about the painting she'd made, about how Tommy had pushed her on the swings at recess. "Mama, why are you crying?" she asked suddenly, her small hand reaching out to touch my face. I hadn't even realized I was. "Because I'm happy, baby. I'm so happy to see you. Where's Daddy?" "Daddy had to stay at work late tonight. It's just you and me for dinner. How does pizza sound?" "Pizza!" she cheered. And just like that, the moment passed, the innocence preserved for one more day. That night, after Mia was asleep, I packed 3 suitcases, one for me, one for her, one for the baby who would arrive in 3 months. I packed only the essentials: clothes, documents, photographs, the small wooden box my grandmother had given me before she died. Everything else, the furniture, the wedding china, the house itself, I left behind. Let David figure out what to do with the shell of our life. I was taking only what mattered. I left a note on the kitchen counter, weighted down by my wedding ring. The note was simple, just one line. "While you were lying, I learned to live. Don't look for us." I loaded the suitcases into my car as quietly as I could, then carried Mia out, still sleeping, still innocent, still mine. I strapped her into her car seat and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I could see our house. The warm glow of lights we'd left on, the home we'd built that had turned out to be built on sand. I didn't look back as I drove away. 3 months later, my son was born in a hospital 2 states away, in a small town where no one knew my story, where I was just another single mother doing her best. I named him Lucas, which means bringer of light, because that's what he was. What both my children were, my reason for starting over, my reason for believing in second chances. David tried to find us. He called, he texted, he sent emails begging for another chance, promising he'd changed. I blocked them all. My lawyer handled the divorce proceedings, the custody arrangements, the division of assets. I wanted nothing from him except my freedom and the child support that would help me provide for our children. Alexa had her son 2 weeks after I had Lucas. I know because she found me on social media, sent me a message with a photo of a tiny baby boy with David's nose. "His name is Mason," she wrote. "I thought you should know. For when they're older. For when they're ready." I looked at that photo for a long time, at this child who was my son's brother, who shared his blood if not his home. And I wrote back, "When they're ready, we'll figure it out. But not now. Not while the wounds are still fresh." Years passed. Mia grew tall and fierce and asked questions I answered as honestly as I could. Lucas took his first steps, said his first words, learned to read. I got a job at a nonprofit, made new friends, built a new life that had nothing to do with David Harrison or the woman I'd been when I was married to him. And then, on Lucas's 5th birthday, Alexa reached out again. "I think it's time," she wrote. "Mason keeps asking about his brother, and I think they deserve to know each other, don't you?" I thought about it for a long time. I thought about David, who'd been a distant but present father to our children, who sent child support religiously and showed up for birthdays and school plays but never pushed for more, never demanded the access he legally could have had. I thought about the boys, about Lucas and Mason, about how they'd done nothing wrong, how they didn't deserve to be punished for the sins of their parents. "Okay," I finally wrote back. "Let's meet." For the boys, the playground was neutral territory, a place where children laughed and played and didn't know anything about betrayal or broken promises. I held Lucas's hand as we walked toward the swings, where I could see a woman with a little boy who had David's dark curls. Alexa looked older, worn in a way I recognized from my own mirror. Motherhood and heartbreak had marked us both. Mason was hiding behind her legs, shy, peeking out at Lucas with curious eyes. "Hi," Alexa said softly. "Thank you for coming." I nodded. "This isn't for us. This is for them. I know." She knelt down beside Mason. "Sweetheart, this is Lucas. He's your brother. Remember how I told you that you have a brother?" Mason's eyes went wide. "Really?" Lucas looked up at me, questions in his eyes that I'd tried to prepare him for but knew he wouldn't fully understand until he was older. "Mama? It's okay, baby. Mason is your brother. You share the same daddy, even though you live in different houses. That happens sometimes. But you're still brothers. Okay?" They studied each other for a long moment, these two boys who shared blood and a father but nothing else. And then Lucas said, "Do you like dinosaurs?" Mason's face lit up. "I love dinosaurs!" "Me too. I have a T-Rex at home. It roars and everything." And just like that, they were running off together toward the sandbox, their hands clasped, their laughter bright and innocent and free of all the complicated history that bound Alexa and me together. We stood in silence, watching them play, two women who'd loved the same man and been broken by him in different ways. "I'm sorry," Alexa said finally. "I know I've said it before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry for what I did to you, to your family. I was young and stupid and selfish, and I've thought about it every day for the past 5 years." I looked at her, at this woman who'd once been my enemy but now was just another mother trying to do right by her child. "I'm not the one you need to apologize to," I said. "Our sons are the ones who'll have to explain to their friends why they have a brother they only see sometimes. They're the ones who'll have to navigate the complexity we created." "I know." She wiped at her eyes. "David wants to be here. He keeps asking when he can see them together." No. The word came out sharp, final. He made his choice when he lied to both of us. He gets his custody time with each boy separately. He doesn't get to play happy family with all of us like nothing happened. That's what I told him. Alexa smiled slightly. "You were always stronger than me. Even back then, when you were struggling, you had this core of steel. I envied that about you." "Strength wasn't something I wanted," I said. "I wanted a husband who loved me enough to be honest. I wanted a marriage that meant something. But you don't always get what you want. Sometimes you just get what you need, whether you want it or not." We watched the boys build a sandcastle together, their heads bent close, already conspiring in the way brothers do. Mason handed Lucas his shovel, and Lucas shared his bucket. Simple gestures that meant everything. "They're going to be okay," Alexa said quietly. "Aren't they?" I thought about my answer, about everything I'd learned in the 5 years since that terrible day in the hospital, about how pain doesn't last forever, about how children are more resilient than we give them credit for, about how love can be messy and complicated and imperfect and still be real. "Yeah," I said finally. "They're going to be better than okay. Because they have mothers who love them enough to put their needs first. Because they have each other, and because they're going to grow up knowing that honesty matters more than perfection, that truth matters more than comfort, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from a lie, even when walking away hurts like hell." Lucas ran back to me then, sand in his hair, joy on his face. "Mama! Mason and me are going to build the biggest castle ever. Can he come to my birthday party next week?" I looked at Alexa, who nodded slightly, gratefully. "Sure, baby. He can come to your party." "Yay!" Lucas threw his arms around my legs, hugged me tight, then ran back to his brother, to their sand castle, to the innocent friendship they were building from the ruins of their parents' mistakes. I watched them play until the sun started to set, until other parents started packing up their children and heading home. Alexa and I exchanged phone numbers, made tentative plans for the next playdate, and said awkward goodbyes that would get easier with time. As I drove home with Lucas, chattering in the back seat about his new best friend who was also his brother, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Not happiness, exactly. Not the naive joy I'd once believed marriage would bring. But peace, the calm that comes from knowing you made the hardest choice and survived it. The quiet satisfaction of knowing you chose yourself, chose your children, chose truth over comfortable lies. That night, after Lucas was asleep, I stood in the doorway of his room and watched him breathe, this beautiful boy who'd been born from betrayal but who was innocent of all of it. On the wall above his bed, he'd taped the drawing he'd made that afternoon. 2 stick figures holding hands, labeled me and Mason, brothers. I thought about David, about the text he'd sent that evening. "Thank you for letting them meet. I know I don't deserve your kindness." I hadn't responded. Didn't plan to. Because he was right, he didn't deserve my kindness. But our sons deserved to know each other. They deserved better than their father had given them. And that was the difference between us now. I was living for what they deserved. He was still living for what he wanted. In the kitchen, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood at the window, looking out at the small backyard of my rented house. It wasn't the house I'd imagined having when I was young and believed in forever. It wasn't the life I'd planned, the story I'd thought I was living, but it was mine, honest and hard-won and real. And that, I'd learned, was worth more than any lie, no matter how comfortable, worth more than any promise, no matter how sweet, worth everything. I raised my glass to my reflection in the window, to the woman I'd become, the one who'd walked through fire and come out the other side. "While you were lying," I whispered, "I learned to live." And for the first time in 6 years, I meant it.